Hey, it's Derek from WatchMeCode.net. So in my previous video, I talked a lot about the idea of delegating work and the balance that you need to find when trying to delegate work, especially as a brand new manager like I was describing in that particular video, and how difficult that can be at times, and just figuring out that balance between trust but verify where you need to fall on that spectrum. But the question that I didn't really ask and certainly didn't answer in that video was, what work do you delegate? And that can be a difficult question in itself, completely separate from how you manage the people that you're delegating work to. And so I want to talk about that for a moment. And I do want to answer the question of what work do you delegate? But first, I do have a story for you. So years ago, I guess growing up, actually, I shouldn't say years ago, for most of my life, I've spent a good amount of time working with my hands, doing physical things. My dad taught industrial arts at a small college. He worked for various manufacturing companies. We spent a lot of time building things, repairing things, from houses to cars to toys to, whatever it was. So most of the cars that I rode around in when I was growing up, they were rebuilt by my dad. We would buy them at a salvage yard. They'd be wrecked. They'd have whatever problem. We would fix the car, get it okayed by the highway patrol and all that kind of stuff so that it was good to go. And we'd drive that car around for a while, sell it, buy another one, and do the same thing. And I got to be really good at helping my dad repair cars. I understood the basics of a lot of simple mechanical things in the engines and how the cars worked and all that by the time I was, early teens. And so high school rolls around, and it's time for me to get my own car. So what do? Well, we go buy a wrecked car, we rebuild it, and that's what I drive around. And that's not to say that we got cheap junk cars either. I mean, I ended up with an Acura Integra, which is a pretty darn nice car for a kid in high school. Yeah, it had been wrecked, so it was dirt cheap, but we rebuilt it, and it turned out to be a really nice car after that. But here's the thing. Once I got out of college, I almost immediately stopped doing that. My wife and I had moved to Dallas, Texas, just after I had left college, and we were looking for a car to replace my minivan at the time. I had a minivan when I was in college up in Colorado. I used it to haul people up to the mountains for snowboarding and stuff, and it was great. But a minivan wasn't really practical for me in Dallas, Texas anymore. We wanted to get a Honda Civic, basically. And so we went to the dealer, and we looked at Honda Civics, and we ended up buying a used Honda Civic. And that was pretty much it. I was done with rebuilding cars at that point. Not because I couldn't. I certainly could have gone to a salvage yard and bought a wrecked car and had it hauled back to my parents' place and gone home and helped my dad rebuild it. That was an option. In fact, I talked about doing that with my dad. But in the end, it just wasn't worth my time. And so there's this conflict, there's this principle to learn in that little story there about what your time is worth. Years later, I'm working at a job, and I'm on a trip with my boss and my boss's boss, and we're just randomly talking about something. And I mention how I had gone 15 or 20 miles out of my way at one point to pick up, I don't even remember what it was, to buy something at a Best Buy. I think it may have been a monitor that I traveled about half an hour to go buy this monitor. It was a good monitor. It was on sale. My Best Buy didn't have any in stock. The Best Buy at the next town did, so I went and bought it. And I was explaining this situation to the two people in the vehicle with me, and my boss's boss, the director of the department, looks at me and says, "Derek, how much is your time worth? How much money did you spend driving down there to buy that monitor for less than what it would have cost to buy another one in Waco, Texas, where I live?" And I thought about it for a moment, and I spent at least an hour and a half between driving down there, buying it, and then driving back. And the amount of money that I saved? It's only a few dollars. So was that really worth my time? I don't think it was. But here's the thing. Time and money are a constant conflict when talking about buying stuff, getting somebody else to do stuff, you doing it yourself. There's this constant conflict. Is it worth your time to rebuild that car or just go buy a new car? Is it worth your time to drive an hour and a half south to save $20 or $30 on a monitor when you could have just bought one here in town? Is it worth your time? Do you have enough money? There's this conflict at play. Do you have more time than money? And that changes throughout your life, and it changes throughout your situation. Sometimes you have more time available, so it's worth doing it on your own. Sometimes you have more money available, so it's worth paying somebody else to do it or just buying the solution. Sometimes you don't have either. And it's not really worth being involved in the situation at all. You can't be involved because there's no money available. So getting back to the original question, what work do you delegate? You need to first consider the amount of time and money involved. Is it going to be worth your time to do that work? Video editing, for example. I'm recording this video on my phone, and I'm going to send this video over to my editor. My editor does a phenomenal job with these videos, far better than the job that I was doing. He also does it faster, frankly. I'm an okay editor. I can get things done. I know how I want things to look, and I can produce the results that I want. My editor is a great editor. He gets things done so much faster than I do, and he does a much better job of it. So is it worth my time for me to edit these videos, or is it worth my money to pay him to do them? Well, the answer for me is pretty clear in this case. It's far more valuable, far better use of my time to send these videos to him to have him edit them. He does a better job, he does it faster, and I can move on from this video and go do something else that is more productive for my time. So there's kind of an extreme example there where it's obvious that this work, I should just outsource it to him. And there's other examples that are pretty obvious where, well, no, I shouldn't outsource that. I mean, recording this video, for example, I'm probably not going to put this camera down in front of somebody else and have them talk and then put it up on this YouTube channel and call it, Watch Me Code's Thoughts on Code. Because that really wouldn't be the Watch Me Code Thoughts on Code. That would be somebody else's Thoughts on Code. Maybe I'll do that in the future. Maybe I'll do some interviews, things like that. But chances are I'm going to be the one producing these videos, creating this content. Because that's my business. This is what I do. And so now we're really getting at the heart of the question of what work do you delegate? And a couple of weeks ago in one of the EntreProgrammers.com podcasts, I was talking about this very subject. I think I was talking about the process of trying to hire some people to do some work for me. And I said something to the effect of, when it comes to your business, your core business, don't outsource your core business. Do your core business yourself. Outsource the things that are not your core business. And John Sodmes on the podcast with me kind of sat back for a moment and said, never really thought about it that way, but I really like that. And I think there's 3 classifications of work here. And I really liked his 3 classifications of work. There's work that you should never do yourself, just flat out never do it. I'm not going to go mow my lawn. I'm going to pay somebody else to mow my lawn. I have no desire to learn anything about lawn maintenance. No time to do it either. There's work that you should understand, but shouldn't do yourself. Video editing, for example. I spent a lot of time learning video editing because I needed to save money at first. But it also helped me hire a video editor, somebody that was better than I am, because I understood the core of video editing. It made it easy for me to talk to this person about video editing so that I could get the results that I wanted. And then there's the work that you should never outsource, that third category. That third category is your business. That is your core value that you create. Now, these three categories aren't just for business, though. This is applied across the board. Whether you're talking about writing code versus having another person on your team write that code versus buying a third-party solution, off-the-shelf components or widgets or whatever it is. You can take those three categories and apply them anywhere and everywhere in your life. Things you should never have to worry about, just go pay somebody else to do it or buy a solution. Things that you should know how to do, but probably aren't worth your time unless you're in a money crunch. And then the things that you should never outsource. So what work should you be outsourcing? Well, definitely category 1, probably category 2, most of, if not all of category 3, category 2, but never category 3, never the core business, never the expertise that you have. Now, your expertise will change and will narrow and will shift over time, and you need to recognize that. As you start to hire more developers on your team, then your responsibilities will change. What you should consider your core competency will change from writing code to managing people, from managing people to directing the vision, from directing the vision to, however it changes as your career grows and your career path changes. But always be cognizant of those three categories. Things you should never do, things you should know how to do but outsource anyways, and things you should never outsource to anyone other than yourself. So those are my three categories for how I decide to delegate work at this point. And I can look back at my career and I can see myself applying and misapplying those rules and constantly course correcting and adjusting to get back to those rules, even though I've only clarified those rules in the last month or so here. But I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on how you decide which work you should be doing or should not be doing? Drop some comments down below. And be sure to subscribe to Thoughts on Code from watchmecode.net.